On Canada Day, British Columbia's carbon tax plan comes into effect against serious opposition, columnists say, all over that province. That's not good for Mr. Dion, who's out trying to sell his own green plan, and it hasn't helped Mr. Dion either that the provincial leaders in both Saskatchewan and Alberta have come out against Dion's plan, as have the three premiers of the northern Canada provinces. But that is good news for Jack Layton, who's fiercely opposed also to Mr. Dion's green plan, and he joins us from Toronto this Sunday afternoon. Mr. Dion, the Prime Minister, Mr. Layton, the Prime Minister says Dion's plan is crazy. I mean, do you go far enough to say it's crazy? Because a lot of environmentalists do support it.
Well, I don't know where Mr. Harper's been on the climate change issue. Clearly, he doesn't understand it. He has no plan of his own whatsoever. It's very good to have a debate about how we're going to tackle this environmental crisis known as climate change. And so we welcome that discussion because we've got to put a price on carbon. We've got to start to invest in solutions. We believe that's best done through systems that are being used in Europe and now announced in California, embraced by many states and several of our provinces, which is called a cap and trade program. That puts a limit on pollution, makes the polluters pay, and puts every penny into the investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency and public transit, into the solutions. We feel that the carbon tax plan of Mr. Dion doesn't accomplish that, and in fact, it's not even possible to know how much greenhouse gas emission reduction would happen with his plan, as he himself has said. We need real firm limits on pollution so we can get a grip on this critical issue.
In fact, you're so serious about this, you're doing something pretty unusual between election campaigns for the NDP. You're coming out with a radio ad against it, and we're going to show Canadians that radio ad, and they can hear it on television for the first time. This is an exclusive look of your radio ad. We'll run that and then come back to you.
In Northern Ontario, we're worried about the environment. Stephen Harper believes we should pass on the pollution problem to our kids. The latest Liberal plan is a carbon tax, but even Stephane Dion admits there's no way of knowing if it'll work. Jack Layton and the NDP have a better plan, one that starts right away and takes on big polluters with measurable cuts to pollution every year, and new investments to make green solutions more affordable to you and your family. For more information on the NDP's better plan for the environment, visit ndp.ca.
Mr. Layton, aren't you worried at all that by opposing Dion so strongly with an environmental plan that a lot of people do support, you may be helping elect the Prime Minister whose environmental plan you're savagely opposed to?
Oh, not at all. I think Canadians are turning away increasingly from Mr. Harper's approach, which is essentially has his head buried in the tar sands, and we're the only party that's saying that we actually need to put a stop to new approvals of projects there. And I don't believe that Canadians will go down that path. What they are looking for is action. So now we're going to have a good and respectful, I hope, very positive debate about how we can best accomplish real reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. One key step that Parliament took just before breaking was to adopt my private member's bill, calling for Canada to set the kind of targets that the UN has spoken about, the Nobel laureate winning scientists who said we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by at least 25% by 2020 and by 80% by 2050. That's now passed through the House of Commons. We're the first national legislature to do so. And now what we need is the immediate action to give Canadians those choices, like reducing the cost of heating their homes. If I give you one clear example. If Mrs. Smith has to buy a tank full of oil to heat her home in Nova Scotia, and there's going to be a tax put on it, but then she's going to get that money back in a tax rebate, she's not going to burn any less fuel. What we need to do is make the polluters pay and put some of that money towards Mrs. Smith's house, renovate it so she can use less energy. That's the better way to go.
Carbon tax does make polluters pay, and it does hit the big emitters, which you want to do, because otherwise Alberta and Saskatchewan would not be fighting it as vigorously are, would they?
Well, it doesn't target them in anywhere near the significant way that the cap and trade system is doing so. That's why the United Nations, the European Union, Barack Obama, even Senator McCain, and so many provinces around the world are adopting it. The Nobel laureate chair of the UN Science Committee on Climate Change just came out and praised cap and trade. That's the approach the NDP has advocated and continues to advocate. And we, as I say, we welcome the debate. I think the main thing Canadians want to know is that if they're going to make some sacrifices, it's going to produce real results. And there's no question that it's cap and trade that doesn't. The carbon tax has no evidence to show it'll really make a significant difference to greenhouse gas emission reductions. That's the problem, as they've seen in places like Norway, where they have a much larger carbon tax, but their study shows it only reduced emissions by 1 or 2%. It's the cap and trade that does the big job.
But the Liberals are saying, by the way, you're worried about the lady who is going to have to pay for her fuel oil, that they'll get a tax break, that this money will go back to them on their taxes, and that so it'll be revenue neutral. And by the way, problem, go ahead.
Yeah, the problem is maybe they can make it revenue neutral, and that's great. The problem is it won't reduce the amount of oil that Mrs. Smith is using to heat her home. So we'll have the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions, and the planet will be in just as much trouble. That's why we propose a strategy to help people right across Canada to renovate their homes based on the Toronto Better Buildings Partnership model that I had a hand in helping to create. I've been at this for about 25 years, Craig, in public policy making. And the key is to do something that works. Canadians really want to know that the steps we're going to take in government are actually going to reduce emissions. And that's why I welcome the debate. I think that the NDP plan, which includes regulations on the big emitters, a cap and trade, make those polluters pay, but put the money into the solutions. Things like public transit. Yeah. I mean, you've got to have enough buses to move people around as gas prices go through the roof, so they can make the choices to find more affordable and less polluting ways to commute.
In one sense, though, your approach removes personal responsibility from people. They don't have to feel the onus on themselves to do anything, because they'll let the big emitters do it, and they can keep going and wasting fuel the way they've been doing.
Not at all. In fact, our plan will give people the choices that they're desperate to make. The public's way ahead of us on this. They want the choices to be there, whether it's vehicles that pollute less, more public transit available to them, appliances that use less energy. And what we've got, they also want wind power. They want to get access to solar power. They're crying out for this. But the Dion plan doesn't put any investments there. It gives the money all back to people, and they'll pollute the same amount. What our plan does is take the money from the polluters and put it into the solutions. And that's, I think, going to stand the test of reasonableness as Canadians debate this, and we certainly look forward to that debate.
Mr. Layton, thanks for your time this Sunday. We appreciate it. Good summer.
Okay, thanks a lot, Craig.
Just ahead, Jane has an exclusive new poll on why Canadians want more charisma from their leaders. And speaking of that, as we go to break, pictures of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton campaigning together for the first time in Unity, New Hampshire.